Today, I will likely have straight hair all week. So I don't blow out my hair very often, but when I do, people that don't normally see me are like, oh my gosh, you look so different. So this is what straight hair looks like. But it's honestly so much easier sometimes to have straight hair, but I do try to embrace my curls as much as I can. But sometimes it's fun to change it up. Okay, so today we are talking about formative assessment. We're going to continue from our strategy session from last week. So I'm going to just quickly review a few things I shared last week, but I really encourage you to go back to last week's training session. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see it right within our channel. If you're on our Classroom Crusaders Facebook group, then you can go into units and see it right in there in instructional strategies. So, and if you're on our Classroom U Facebook page, you just have to look down in previous posts. But if you're on our Facebook business page, the Classroom U page, go join our Classroom Crusaders group because it's a good place to be. So we have a bunch of new people in our group as well. So I'll just introduce myself quickly. I am Carrie Lapoli. I've been an educator for 24 years. I love the online world in being able to reach a lot of teachers and a lot of educators at once. So I consult in schools all around the country, but have always had a vision of being able to have an online consulting business as well. And so I get to do that here. And a lot of you are experiencing what online learning looks like now. So I want to try to be your support. So last week we talked about a formative assessment, and I am a huge believer that formative assessment done daily is one of the most important things that we can do as teachers. And let me just tell you why very quickly. Our job as teachers is to ensure kids are learning. And I always say that if our goal is not 100% of students learning 100% of the time, then I ask you, with all the respect in the world, are you sure this is for you? Because I get that getting 100% of students learning 100% of the time is not necessarily going to happen all the time, but it can't ever not be our goal. And I always say, just like a doctor, his goal has to be 100% cure for all of his patients. Or she has to go into a meeting with you as a prospective patient saying, I want to heal you. Right? I want you to be healed. And I'm going to do everything in my power to ensure that happens. And I think our roles as educators are just as important. So 100% of students learning 100% of the time has to be the goal that we're always striving for, which means we will be working until the day we retire and never quite getting there, but never stopping just because we didn't. So do nows and exit tickets are one of the most amazing formative assessments that we as teachers can do. And the reason why is because when we have, I call them the bookends to a classroom, when we start our class with what I call a do now, and we end the class with an exit ticket, we actually can measure learning in that day. So everybody that's teaching a class should have an objective of what students need to learn that day, every day. Even if it's part of a bigger project or part of a bigger unit, there's still something they should walk into your class learning. And if we just do an exit ticket at the end of class, we don't really know that they didn't know it before they walked in or before they logged on. So a do now actually has two parts to it. One is we ask a question from the previous day or the previous class. I call it a review question. And then we ask a question about what we are going to teach today. So they may not know that answer, but at least we know if they know or not. Okay. Then at the end of class, we repeat that same preview question, that same question that we asked about what they're going to, but what you haven't taught yet. You're going to ask it again in your exit ticket and look at that data. We can compare their answer at the beginning of class with their answer at the end of class and truly determine if they learned. And then I suggest asking a couple more questions that go a little deeper into the topic to see how far down or how deep that they know. If a student already knows the answer going into the lesson, that helps you make some decisions in the moment about instruction. And if a student doesn't know it, well, that's okay because you're going to teach it. Now, if a student doesn't know your review question before you start your class, then that helps you right? Did they know it on the exit ticket yesterday? If so, and they didn't know it today, oh my gosh, what happened between yesterday and today? If they didn't know it on the exit ticket and they didn't know it today, then that's telling you something about where that student is compared to the rest of the class. And how are you going to work to make sure that that student really starts to learn that information in in the moment, right? Data-driven decision making at its best. So that was really quick, but I go into a lot more detail in my previous session. So I'd love for you to go back and look at that. But what I want to talk about today, a few teachers messaged me and said, how do we collect data and how do we do it online? And so I wanted to take some time to just go through a few tools that I think would be really simple to do this with. And what I really want to do is ask you, what are you using or what can you use for tools like this? I don't want you to go crazy and like have to learn a whole new thing, but there's a lot of stuff out there that can help. Now, one thing that's really important is that the data that you collect has to be individual. So you know how sometimes we might do Kahoot, for example. If you can get your individual data for every single student and track it, then fine. But it's a little bit hard to do. It's when you have a whole class, that's really hard to do on something like Kahoot. But if you have a few other options that I don't talk about today, and I'm not going to talk about anything like mind blowing. I just want you to think about ways that you can use different technology. So I'm going to talk about three. Two, most likely, you almost 100% know about. I just want you to think about using what you already know. And then a third is what a few teachers told me this week they're using and really like. So I thought I would introduce you to that third program. So when you are asking your questions, remember, you want to get it right in the beginning of class and at the end. And at the beginning of class, you need to see that data right away because then you need to know which students are or are not with you. I do this in my university class all the time. I always ask a review question about what was our last week topic. And then I asked a question about our upcoming topic. And so I want to get that data from every individual person. Honestly, I use like a clipboard right while I'm working with my students' names on it and just check off. First question is review question. I scored a 1 or a 0. 1 0 1 0 1 0. And I look to see which students have it right and which don't. And then in my preview question, the one that we're going to learn today, I mark that as well. But I am able to keep my eye on that when I do like small groups or something like that. So I know who to pair together because who already has background in the information. Now, if I have the majority of my students who know the review question, I'm not going to review that question necessarily because most kids know it. So I have to be a little creative and think about how I'm going to address those few kids that don't know it. So one thing that I do is on Zoom, when I'm doing this with students, I ask the question, I have a little PowerPoint slide, I ask the question, and then they private message to me the answer for the review and the preview question. And so when they private message to me, I also give them something to do if they finish the questions early so I can tabulate the data. And then I make my decisions based on that. So if I see less than 50% of students were getting that review question right, I will review that answer. If I see more than half of my students have gotten that right, then I private message back to those students who got it wrong. And I will often give them either more information, ask a question, and try to get them to be able to come back to me with a little bit more information. But because I'm giving everybody something to read or do, it gives me time to respond back to my students that didn't get the answer right. But I'm not going to review with the whole class because most of them got it right. And then the preview question, I don't review with the students because that's going to be my lesson. But I know which students already know and which students don't know the topic. And then I will either cold call appropriately or make my small groups in my breakout rooms according to who I think already has background knowledge in that topic that we're teaching. So I use Zoom for my do nows and exit tickets all the time. And then I have them do an exit ticket before they leave, private message to me. And then I can save the chat and then I have my data right there. And then I can take my little spreadsheet and just tabulate what students got what right and wrong and compare my preview question to my exit ticket questions. And I can see which students progressed during the class. Now, there's other formative assessments we should be doing in the middle of class, but I'm just talking about these bookends right now. So I use that data, and then the next day, or the next class, because I'm teaching university once a week, the next class, I will repeat that exit ticket question. One of the questions in the exit ticket, I'll repeat as my review question in my do now. And then I can compare their answers from one class to the other. So if that makes sense, it's an easy planning tool for that. So I use Zoom all the time for my do nows and exit tickets. Another thing that a lot of teachers I work with use is Google Classroom. Google Classroom, if you're already using it and you're putting assignments with questions already into Google Classroom, make your first one your do now and have them submit it right away. Now, if you're not doing live coursework with them, it's okay. It will still give you really great data, because if you see that a student got the review question wrong, and then they're going on with, their lessons or whatever it is, you might want to shoot them a message through Google Classroom that says, hey, I want you to review this, right? And then you have them do their exit ticket question at the end. And this is especially for online learning right now. You're going to be able to gauge if students learned in the process of going through the assignments that you assigned. Because if their preview question and their do now is wrong, but their question that you repeated in the exit ticket is right, then you know that your students all on their own learned the concept you were hoping that they would get. And you make really specific norms and why. So this do now and exit ticket is simply for me to see if you learned. You're not getting a grade for that. It is required, but I don't want you to use any resources, because it will allow me to adjust my teaching based on what you know. So there's no reason to use your resources if they're not supposed to use your resources. I really just want to know what you learned so that I can give you what you need if you didn't get something right. Okay, so I love Google Classroom for do nows and exit tickets. And then the third one that I want to share with you, and I'm going to share my screen here. I'm going to try to be all fancy because I'm coming live on through Zoom right now, and I'm going to be able to share my screen. So this is another one that a few teachers have told me about, and I didn't know about this. This is why I love this community. So goformative.com. Give me some likes or some loves or some comments if you use this. So this is actually a way that you can do exit tickets and track it live. So I love the fact that you can act on live responses. That's what I'm talking about, data-driven decision-making. You can adjust in the moment based on how your students are answering. So if you're doing a live Zoom session, you can have them actually answer the questions live, and then you can get the results right away. And it's color-coded, so you know right away if this was it's toggling back and forth the screen right now, but if this was a review question, you could see all the green, and then one student didn't get it right. So that would be the student that I would private message or send the cheat sheet to, or have something that I would respond to. And then the yellows, I'm not sure, you might want to just, maybe you send a private message just at, clarifying something. So I think that that's a cool way to do that. And then what I love this is tracking over time. So you could take your do now data and your exit ticket data and track it for your whole class. So think about this. If you had data, oh my gosh, imagine this, over a week or over a unit, and you can share the data that at the beginning of the unit, 20% of students knew the preview question for the do now. But at the end of the unit, 80% of students did. Or you could show over time that your student was getting the do now questions wrong in the preview, but the exit ticket questions right 80% of the time. And that meant he was learning and really being able to progress 80% of the time. This will give you red flags right away. It'll really help you to think about which students need extra support because they're not getting it right in that moment. You're not waiting until a test. You're not waiting until some sort of summative assessment. You're literally collecting data in the moment and adjusting your instruction. And that's what I love about this part of it, right? But then here, now we can track over time. And what should happen is if you're adjusting your instruction to meet that student's needs, then we should start to see improvement in some of those scores if they're engaging and all of that kind of stuff, right? So I love that concept, and I just think this is a powerful tool to have. And there's a pricing structure in here, but you can get the basic for free. And from what I'm hearing from teachers, this is great. So this is doing what they need for them. So I hope that that helps you. But the key is to figure out a way to collect data efficiently and then to use the data in the moment. Now, your exit ticket data, you're not going to use in the moment, but you will look at it, compare to the do now data, and then inform your instruction for the next day. Now, even if you're not teaching live, you can adjust some of the things that you're sending to certain kids on your Google Classroom or whatever it is, whatever platform that you're using. So I threw out a lot of information on you about this. I would love to hear your thoughts. If you have questions, put them in the comments. We'll write back to you. If you have other formative assessment tools that you're using for something like a do now and exit ticket, let us know. We're going to talk more about some other formative assessments that are great for online. But for now, we're just sticking with this. So I want to hear your response, and I want to hear what resources you're using or could use for this kind of strategy. It's one of the most powerful ones you can do as a teacher. Remember, we're trying to get to 100% of students 100% of the time. That's it. Thanks. Bye.